All right, folks, we are back. And Mike Zullo, so it sounds like that you've got a lot better connection now, huh?
Yeah, I hope it is better.
Oh, my gosh, yes. Yeah, you sound like you're right here in the studio with me. That's great. Okay, good. Well, listen, so we're going to talk about this, and then this is important, the information packets, digital packets of information. And I want you to unwrap that because it goes to the CIA breaching the Hawaii Department of Health and University of Hawaii records and routing information to Jakarta, from there back to Washington, D.C., et cetera, the manipulation of information. But before we do, speaking of manipulation of information, you and I kind of, we know that every time you've been in court with Arpaio or you've been on this show with earth-shattering, breaking information over the years, almost every time within a day or two of that, your computers are breached and or fried. And it's happened again, right?
Yeah, it did. This will be the fourth time in 1 year.
Yeah,
that this has happened.
And they always
right after.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right after Jerry Corsi released the article, it was about 7 hours after that.
Yeah,
the computer just started to act strange again, and then just destroyed the registry.
Brother. Well, we'll talk about that because you learned a lot about how all that works through Dennis Montgomery. And, in fact, I've got a little clip we're going to play later on of something that Dennis said about things that they could do to destroy people's lives with this stuff. So we'll talk about that. But anyway, so you're dealing with another computer fry right after you release this information about CIA being involved. Yeah,
it's out getting repaired right now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, listen. Bless your heart. Let's move on. Talk to us about information packets and how that relates to the CIA breaches.
Well, the packet information is how it travels digitally through the Internet, and when you send an email or anything like that, it's broken down into snippets, little packets, and they have to have the first packet. The last packet is like the little code that reconstructs everything that's been sent. And according to Mr. Montgomery, he said that with the right computer equipment and time, he would be able to recreate or pull down the packet information and may be able to decipher what was being sent back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And according to him, that information is all preserved and archived in the documentation and the hard evidence that he has turned over to the FBI 2.5 years ago. And the FBI has done absolutely nothing with it.
Yeah. Wow. But see, now we know so much more. Because, I mean, who was in charge of the FBI, Mike? It was James Comey, right?
James Comey at that time, yes, and you had a combination of Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch at the DOJ.
Of course. And you had a complicit Congress and complicit courts stacked with Obama appointees. I mean, so Dennis Montgomery, who, by the way, has total immunity, right? I mean, explain that. I mean, this guy's for real. We're not saying he's some perfect model citizen and everything that falls off his lips is 100% accurate at all times. But this dude is for real and has immunity because of all of this, right?
He does. His attorney that I introduced him to, Larry Klayman, he's been on your show before.
Yes.
Mr. Klayman was successful in finally getting the federal authorities to take interest in what Montgomery had. And on two separate occasions, Mr. Montgomery got immunity twice. The last time he was, my understanding, questioned for about 4 hours. According to Mr. Montgomery, he turned this information over and a lot of other things that I am not going to speak about, but I do know what they are. He turned the information over, and you have to realize something. Mr. Montgomery would have to be literally have a death wish for turning over information to federal authorities. Even if you do have immunity, lying nullifies your immunity agreement.
Right.
Lying to federal investigators, the FBI, will put you in prison.
Right.
So he didn't go there making up a story. He went there with the goods.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt confident enough in what he had that he was willing to sit down with them and speak to them.
Right.
And my understanding is they still have the information, and they have done nothing with it.
Yeah. Well, under the Comey administration, of course, it was buried. I mean, that was Obama's puppet and Hillary Clinton's puppet. So, but now the guy who actually was responsible for getting the fake birth certificate put on the government website by poking Obama in the chest, that guy, that dude, is now the president, one Donald Trump. And he's cleaning house, draining the swamp, fired James Comey, and so we'll see what happens, right?
Well, Carl, I mean, just look at what's unfolding.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, if they will go to these lengths to throw an investigation, down the drain and cover up the way they're covering up, do you really? They're not going to go near it.
No, this is the foundation of everything else we're watching.
Foundational lie to the presidency of the United States.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm just going to say, what if, folks, I'm using the word if, the CIA literally manufactured a false birth certificate for someone who didn't have an American birth certificate so that they could be the commander-in-chief of the number one nuclear superpower in the world and sit in the White House for 8 years. What if? You see, now, if that is what happened, does what's happening now with Donald Trump and all the investigations and the continual attempting to get him out of office, doesn't that make more sense, Mike? What if? That makes a whole lot more sense what we're watching.
Well, it absolutely does. And you and I had conversations about this because I pulled you in, especially after the sheriff deputized you, and told you things that Montgomery was telling us that you and I are witnessing right now happen in real time.
Yeah, and some of that we can talk about in the next hour. Some of that we can share with the audience, so we'll do that. Well, Mike, I hear the music, so time is a horrible taskmaster, but we still have a lot to unpack, but we've got another hour to do it. So are you still up with me? Can you keep that good connection you have?
Yeah, I can do that, Carl.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay, good deal. So we're up for another hour, folks. We still have a lot to unpack, a lot of stuff you've never heard before, plus some things you have heard, but with a better understanding to it. So don't go anywhere. Freedom Friday, Carl Gallups, Mike Zullo. All right, folks, welcome back. Yeah, we're back in the Oval Office, and it's the top of the second hour, Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. And my guest this afternoon, and will be for the remainder of the show, this entire second hour, is Mike Zullo, the former lead investigator, Under Sheriff Joe Arpaio, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, the fourth largest sheriff's office in the nation. And he was the former lead investigator of the Obama fraud birth certificate case. And this afternoon, Mike, are you on the line?
I am, Carl. Hey, Carl, before we go further, I'd like to highlight something.
Yes, sir.
So your audience really understands why this is so significant.
Mm-hmm.
This pertains more to the short form birth certificate, what I'm going to speak of next. That was first released, I believe, in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
However, prior to that, there was a fictitious short form released by some guy whose name escapes me right now, but he was a former employee, I believe an analyst for NSA, but don't quote me on that. I could be wrong on the agency.
Okay.
And he eventually comes clean and says that he fabricated it. Mm-hmm. It was missing a raised seal. It was missing some other things on it. But what struck me about that is here's this guy, purportedly not connected to anybody, creates this fictitious short form, but it's got the correct serial number on it as it corresponds to the document Obama ended up releasing on two different occasions.
That is interesting.
How do you have that?
Yeah.
How do you have that? So where did this number come from? And there's a lot of speculation it belonged to a little deceased infant by the last name of Sunahara, and there's speculation that her number was utilized. During the course of this investigation, I interviewed directors of health in a number of places, and they all said to me that the software that's used that creates birth documents, you can change just about all the information contained in the document, but you cannot change the serial number.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's issued, it's issued. So now let's go back and look at these breaches. And unfortunately, we were not able to go further back in time to see how many other times this occurred.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone has the ability to go in there, take over a computer as an administrator, has working knowledge of that vital statistics program, goes in and changes information, they need a serial number.
Mm-hmm.
So they take a serial number. Well, there's a lot of speculation because the serial number on Obama's certificate is wildly off by about 400 numbers, which doesn't make any sense. Now, we've seen other birth certificates from different years that their numbers are not consecutive, but they're not the span of differential between number to number, like Obama's. So this has a lot of significance, what Montgomery was saying. And also remember this. If a phony record was planted in the computer, the unsuspecting clerk making a short form would have no knowledge. It's just information in the computer. But they were also being pressed for a long form. And what we don't know is what other information is contained in that computer file. There may be a plethora of information, doctors' names, you don't know. So we don't know what was in there. But that's what makes this so significant. Going back in and out, and then 3 months before the release of the long form, that's highly suspicious.
Right. And
highly suspicious activity.
Yeah, and let me just go ahead and say, everything you just said and what we now know about the CIA breaches, all of this could be investigated and settled in 2 days by a congressional investigative committee with the powers of Congress.
This could be settled so quickly it would make your head spin.
Yeah, it's one of the it's potentially the greatest criminal act in the history of the United States of America. But yet it could be solved probably quicker than any other crime of its type, based upon all the investigation you guys have already done and all the info you have.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a no-brainer to go figure this out. It's so easy.
Yet, isn't it interesting? And I guess you don't have to say anything. I was going to say I'm asking you to speculate, but you don't have to speculate anything. I'm just speculating. Isn't it interesting, Mike, that all of the information you have released, the 3 press conferences that you and Sheriff Arpaio have done, all of the information you released about the 2 international document digital companies and the affidavits they've given and the videos you produced showing how the Johanna Ani document was used to build the Obama document from ground up, and those digital document expert companies they have given you the affidavit that that's exactly what happened, that hers was used, that it's a fake birth certificate, that the people of the world, the people of America, have seen absolutely nothing official. All that is a copy of something that probably was manufactured. And isn't it interesting now that you've released the information that one of the 3-letter agencies that was breaching, of all places, the Hawaii Department of Health, and of all places, the University of Hawaii History Department and Archive Department, and of all places, the information was being sent to Jakarta, Indonesia, and of all places, that information was being sent to Washington, D.C. And now that you've released all of that, isn't it interesting? Not a single mainstream media source has contacted you. Not a single congressional investigative committee has contacted you. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, do we even have a nation left anymore? I mean, this is, and I've challenged people, Mike. I've said, look, if you think all this stuff that Mike has, all these affidavits, the international digital, the hard copy, trail of the CIA encroachment and all of these different things, if you think it's a bunch of junk, hold an investigation and prove that what Mike Zullo has is junk.
Oh, please do. Please do. And let me point something else out to you, Carl. This is what is so amazing to me. If you go back in time and you remember what the Governor Abercrombie could not find the document, and then he says they found something in the archives written down, but it wasn't a long form. Not a birth certificate, because he doesn't identify it as that. Well, where is this thing breached? On November 2010, the Hawaii Government Department of Health archive is breached. Now, when I was on your show a week ago, I believe it was, I said we contacted the state archives. They don't have anything. We needed to rule them out. Right? But the Department of Health has archives, and that gets breached. Right, on November 10th. I wonder what they were doing in there. What did they need to look for in there, or what did they plant in there? I mean, so you start looking at this and you start saying, well, wait a minute. Every place that this document would have had any hope of resurrection has been breached, including the governor's office himself.
Well, along those lines, let me ask you this. I'm not asking you to speculate upon what might have happened to Loretta Fuddy, who's now dead in a plane crash, but what was her role in this birth certificate thing? Because that's significant.
Loretta Fuddy is the one who released it.
Yes!
She's the one who signed off on it.
The one that supposedly handled it.
Yes, she handles it. And she's the only one that I believe, in the research that has been done, got that position with no medical background.
Yeah.
So she's over there, she's the one releasing it, and everybody's supposed to say this is all good. And I want to point something else out to your audience. You never saw a real short-form birth certificate either.
Yeah, that's
They're
good.
showing you pictures of things. That's what this whole thing is. It's pictures with a narrative. There has been nobody to verify anything. A matter of fact, people had tried to get a verification of the short form, and Department of Health of Hawaii reneged. They would not verify what it was.
Yeah.
Someone else, I believe, asked for the records of who asked for it, and they got information back, and everything was redacted. Now, the way I read the law, the only person that could ask for it would have been Obama. But there's no evidence of that. And that short form, it was housed at the DNC headquarters in Chicago, and they brought in some left-wing fact-checkers to declare it authentic. Those people can't declare that any more authentic than they can a phony $20 bill. But again, you see the setup, you see the picture, the scenario, what they want you to believe.
Right.
Well, don't believe any of it.
And then add to the mix the only person that we're aware of who officially released the long form, supposedly, and handled it, Loretta Fuddy, is now dead, and not only dead, but the only one who died in a hard water Hawaii. The only one. And how convenient, huh? So,
well, you know, that's something I'm going to reserve judgment on.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. I'm not asking you to comment on it. I'm just talking out loud. So anyway, Mike, you know, let's do this. I'm going to ask you, we're going to take a break in just a moment because we still have so much more to unpack, but I want to ask you about something that was said in federal court during the Arpaio, that sham trial and court proceeding that finally President Trump issued a pardon that was connected to all of that. But in court, Sheriff Arpaio said something about some of the information that Montgomery presented. He called it, I think, junk info or something like that. And that's been kind of held over your head by some of the naysayers. And I want you to clean that up for us because there's a context to that. And that context means everything. So after we take this break, will you do that, Mike?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. I think that's an important piece of information. And then we'll keep moving forward because we've got things that Montgomery disclosed to you that you've never disclosed before that I think you can unpack here on Freedom Friday, and some other connections that we'll make today that have never been made before. So anyway, folks, a lot of good stuff, a lot of new stuff coming up. Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, Mike Zullo in the house with me. We're going to take a quick 2-minute timeout. Don't go anywhere.
The Satanists wanted to install their own tribute, a pagan idol, on the Capitol grounds, right next to the Ten Commandments.
Billions around the planet are witnessing a world in the grasp of sadistic spiritual darkness. This unholy alliance has infected our governments, our religious institutions, and our societies. The world appears to be unraveling. But can the evil behind these dark supernatural forces be defeated? Is everything playing out just as the Bible predicted it will in the final days? At last, you can know the answers to mankind's most urgent questions and learn your destiny among today's events in the new, unprecedented work taking the prophecy world by storm. Gods and Thrones, Nakash, Forgotten Prophecy and the Return of the Elohim by best-selling author, former decorated law enforcement officer, and senior pastor Carl Gallups. This changes everything. Available now wherever fine books are sold.